Okay, we'll call the meeting to order. Thank you all for coming. Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Your Worship. First item are minutes of the Council and Committee meeting held Monday, March 11th. The recommendation is that the committee approve those minutes.
Moved by Councillor Reamer, second by Councillor Nicholson. All in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. Are there any additions? Are there any additions to the agenda for today? No round table items? Seeing none. Okay, Madam Clerk.
Item 2 is a delegation from Ms. Patricia Lucy of TransLink. She's here to speak regarding the TravelSmart program. I'll just ask her to proceed to the podium.
Mr. Suzak.
Thanks, Your Worship. I'll just ask Ms. Mahoric to introduce our guests.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Today we have Patricia Lucy from TravelSmart, affiliated with TransLink, as well as Shirley Samuch, TransLink's Intergovernmental Relations, speaking on TravelSmart initiatives for consideration.
Mayor and Council, thank you so much for having me here today. As is mentioned, I'm here to talk about TransLink's TravelSmart program and to ask Council to formally adopt TravelSmart as an official partnership for Coquitlam. I'm going to start off by talking about transportation demand management. This is a term that we hear more and more in this region. I think there has been a realization that we cannot build ourselves out of the transportation issues that we see today. Simply building roads and transit alone is not going to help us to get the most out of the infrastructure that we have. For the lofty goals that we've set for our region and for our individual municipalities, we need to be working across partners and across regions to, again, get more out of our transportation in the region. If you look at the slide, you see there's 3 components to transportation demand management that for a TDM program to be successful when all 3 of these are in place. The first is the infrastructure. We do need to have transit and roads in place as well as bike lanes. There also needs to be policy in relation to these. But a third piece that is often underutilized and underfunded is this piece around culture and behavior change. If we want to see people making a difference, we need to get out and talk to them. We need to provide them with incentives and information to let them know how they can change their behavior. And when we look at all of these three pieces together, there's a realization that this is bigger than any one entity. This is bigger than TransLink. We need to work across multiple governments, across different partners, nonprofit and for-profit organizations, to again be changing the way that we travel in this region. And this is where TravelSmart was born. This is meant to be a neutral program, a neutral brand that can be utilized by the entire region. So what is TravelSmart? At its core, it's a transportation demand management program that uses information, incentives, and tools to help people to change the way that they travel. And this is not meant to be a broad broadcast message. This is really about understanding what makes sense to the individual. If I'm speaking with a new family in Coquitlam, this is going to be very different than the messages that I'm giving forward to a single person who lives downtown Vancouver. There's different transportation options available, and they're at different stages in their life. So there's very different motivators. Some people travel the way they do because of the environment. For some people, it's about money. For others, it's about health. So TravelSmart is really about connecting with people on what are these motivations that can help them to make a difference. TravelSmart is also a result of transportation demand management programs that have been in place across this region since 1999. This is not a new kind of approach. We know that if we get out there and talk to people, give them proper information, give them incentives, they will change their behavior. We've seen this work very well with Hydro's PowerSmart program. It's also a TDM brand for Metro Vancouver. What we've seen across this region is there's limited amount of dollars to be invested in TDM. And we have different municipalities investing in their own schools programs and their own seniors outreach. And what we're trying to do with TravelSmart is to leverage these investments. TransLink has made some of these investments, and we want to share them across the region. And really, it's a more efficient use of resources. We can't get out and knock on everybody's door, but we can have technology. We have social media. We can use and leverage our education, marketing campaigns, and hopefully achieve some level of behavior change. And ultimately, we want to help Coquitlam achieve its goals. You guys are doing a lot of things right in this area. Things are growing, you're increasing densities, you're committed to training your young people, you have a new infrastructure that's coming on board. And we want to help you to achieve some of these goals that you have in place. Your approved transportation plan has a large section on TDM. And by working together with TravelSmart, we feel that we can help you to reach more of these goals. Reach out to your seniors, your new Canadians, your school children. So what does it mean to be a partner with TravelSmart? Basically, it means that we're going to bring some of our resources into your municipality. And these are some of the programs that we have. We have TravelSmart for schools. We have an elementary schools program. One is a workshop where we go into the school, we bring out a bus, we teach the kids about sustainable transportation. What are their travel options and why is it important for them to think about traveling differently? We teach them about how to use the online tools, how to use the trip planner, how to use the neighborhood map. We also have a leadership program, which is a more intensive program. We work with a smaller group of students on an ongoing basis. We have them develop the campaign and then disseminate it to their peers. We have a secondary schools program, which is along the same lines. The leadership program works generally with a leadership class, and we have the students do the research. They determine what the transportation issues are for their school and then develop a campaign to overcome that. TravelSmart for Business, we go in with an outreach officer. We sit down with the decision makers to help them to understand why the way that their employees travel to work is important, what it means for the environment, what it means for their bottom line. And we work with them on parking management strategies, bring in lunch and learns, have them be involved in Bike to Work Week or Commuter Challenge. And then the last two programs are TravelSmart for new immigrants and TravelSmart for seniors. And these have traditionally been Transit 101 programs. These two groups have a lot of barriers to taking transit. There's also often concerns around safety. Where does this system go? How do I pay? This is really about breaking down some of those barriers, taking them through those fundamentals of transit training, and then taking them on a field trip. Recently, we have expanded that to cycling. There's a lot of room for these two groups to be changing over their recreational cycling into commuter cycling. Here are some images of our TravelSmart for Schools program in action. We have a facilitator, bringing out the bus. The leadership schools get a banner that identifies them as a TravelSmart school. TravelSmart for seniors and new Canadians. For the new Canadians, we get right into the language schools. We've developed curriculum that goes into their everyday classroom. Again, as a piece of the partnership, a fundamental piece of this is the online tools. TravelSmart.ca has been fundamental to how we deliver this program. As I talked about earlier, we can't get out and knock on everybody's door. So this is about utilizing technology, using social networks, using online tools to help to reach more people. This also has a research component. When you sign on to TravelSmart.ca and take the pledge to reduce one vehicle trip per week, you're given a trip diary survey. So it finds out how are you currently traveling today. You then get another one 1 year later so that we can see from your involvement in the program and from your involvement with the online tools and information, have you changed your travel behaviors? And when you become a TravelSmart partner, we then have a portal. That would be TravelSmart.ca/Coquitlam. Because as I spoke about earlier, this is not about a broadcast message. This is about really understanding what matters to the individual. And for your community, what are the infrastructure that are coming online? What are the events that people can go to, that sort of thing? To date, we have 6 partners, all of the North Shore, the Langley, and Port Coquitlam, and each of them have their own TravelSmart portal. We have a variety of tools. This is the online travel tracker, and this shows you as you move from single occupant vehicle into a more sustainable mode, what are you saving in terms of calories burned, GHGs, and as well money. We also have an online trip planner and a neighborhood map. And the purpose of the neighborhood map is to really understand where do you live or where do you work, and what are the amenities around you that you can walk or cycle to, where your transit routes, cycling and walking routes are as well. This is an example of the Port Coquitlam municipal portal. As part of the partnerships with our other 6 partners, we have had a launch campaign, but this is really about understanding what works for the individual municipality. So we would work through, should you adopt a partnership, what that might look like. But we've done campaigns around, can you take one less car trip per week? We've used transit shelter ads, wrapped buses, getting the community to rally around something concrete. Can you reduce 1 car trip per week? I think everyone is okay with taking on that challenge. The last piece is the community maps. And this is a direct mail piece where we work with the city staff to understand what are some areas within your community where we really could have a change in behavior. You can't just go into any area. It's great to have the infrastructure in place, places where people can walk and cycle to. So we identify those areas, and then we send a direct mail piece directly to people's homes. And as a component of this, we generally work with a partner, a local coffee shop that says, if you bring your map into your local coffee shop, you'll get a 2-for-1 latte. As well, we put in there an offer that says, on Thursday night, we're going to be at your farmer's market. If you come on down, we'll give you some kind of an incentive, and the TravelSmart team will help you with individualized travel planning. So this program launched in 2011. 2012 was the first year that we started to enact this municipal strategy and bring in direct partners. And we've been having a lot of success. Our latest research has told us that of 65% of members surveyed report making changes to their single occupant vehicle trips. Of this, 7% attribute this information to incentives and information on TravelSmart.ca. And over 75% of members surveyed have a good to excellent view of the website. So again, this is about moving forward. This is about working together with TravelSmart and Coquitlam to leverage our resources. So I'm here to ask Council today to formally adopt TravelSmart as Coquitlam's Transportation Demand Management Program. Thank you so much for having me here. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to do my best to answer them.
Thank you very much. I do want to I offer 2 comments. One is there's a section in there where the mayor is supposed to accept the challenge of 1 fewer car trip per week. You say 1 less car trip per week, but I'll use correct English and say 1 fewer car trip per week. There are some mayors in the region that are already doing that already, and I probably exceed that currently, particularly in the summer months when I can go a whole week on my bike. But how do we measure? I mean, this is only meant to be augmental, or I guess to be supplementary to what we currently do. And I think some people have already bought in, and I think some of our businesses, for example, have already bought in, and we're asking them not so much to buy into this new program, but to ignore the work that they've already done and try to do better. And I think to some degree, we do want to step back and acknowledge the work that they've already done. So I put that to you to begin.
The reason that we implemented the pledge is because there's many people across the region that feel that this ask to be TravelSmart is about giving up your car. So this is not about not acknowledging the work that's already been done. This is about letting people know that this is just about small incremental steps, a small step that everyone can adopt in their lifestyle. So some of the things that we do on the website and as well through our business program is to acknowledge people that are doing great things. This is largely about putting forward stories. We use local newspapers and magazines to celebrate the work that people are already doing. So that's great that this is going on in the community.
Okay. And I will say it, and I suspect some other colleagues will as well, that here in the suburbs, one of our challenges is that we don't have very good transit service at present. And so while it might be easy for some communities to examine the bus as being a good alternative, in the suburbs sometimes it isn't an alternative at all. Sometimes you simply can't get there from here. When you look at the trip planner and you realize that if I left now to get to that spot, I wouldn't arrive till tomorrow. Mm-hmm. Or, so I think that's one of our challenges in the suburbs is I want us to embrace public transit. Unfortunately, we don't have public transit yet, and some of our areas that we're trying to build as transit-oriented neighborhoods won't get transit for a couple more years, and so by then everyone will have bought a car, and we won't get there. We won't be able to get them out of, I guess it'll be easy to do an incremental improvement at that point because they will be completely car-oriented given that they live in a transit-oriented neighborhood with no transit. So, but I realize that's not you. But I did want to make that statement. Councillor Sikora.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your presentation. I guess you work for TransLink.
Do.
Okay. Well, I think what you need to do, because it seems like there's parts of TransLink is working against you and you're working against the parts of TransLink. Number one, have you ever come to the suburb and ridden the buses to try to get from A to B? You could be wanting to move for 6 blocks and it takes you an hour and a half to get there because you're going to be taken through New Westminster, you'll be taken through Burnaby, you'll be taken all over the place before you get to the point where you want to go. So those are things, I mean, this is a good presentation. And, on the surface looks very, very good. But in fact, I don't know who you're trying to reach because you're not reaching the people that are using the buses that want to go from point A to point B because, like the mayor said, you can't get there. I mean, can you imagine going to Brunette Avenue? You can go to Lougheed Mall, which is about 4 or 5 blocks away. You'll take you to New Westminster and other places first before you can get there. Can you imagine? So you people should be taking those transit buses and say, okay, let me ride this transit bus today, 2 or 3 of them, and see how it gives you a merry-go-round. And why are you doing what's happening? You're not attracting bus riders. You're, matter of fact, driving them away. So people will take their cars. So I'm sure that Councillor Adamson will probably tell you exactly some of the weakest routes, and because you've changed transit just lately has cut service and changed their mode of services. And I'm hearing all kinds of complaints on the street that, trying to go a few blocks takes you an hour and a half because they take you through other communities first. So those are things that I think that you need to really study. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you. Too bad you had to come to a place where there's not good bus service. Otherwise, the plan looks interesting. But my questions are, there's $25,000 mentioned in our staff report, and are we paying that to TransLink?
Thank you. In response, the $25,000 is part of our 5-year capital plan for bicycle facilities and includes an education and outreach component of that, and that's been approved by Council for the last few capital plans.
How much is for educate? What's the education component?
The total amount is $60,000, and the education component is $25,000. To date, we've been underspent on the education piece. It came through in since 2008 as part of a capital program initiative. And the reason we're underspent on the $25,000 education piece is that we've really been in the process of building a bike route network. So it's difficult to invite people to come out and use facilities if the network's not yet in place. And so this is an opportunity from a staff perspective to leverage that funding. We wouldn't be giving money to TransLink versus right now we will spend funds, and this is an opportunity actually to partner with them, and they'll be cost sharing with us instead of us doing it totally on our own.
Well, as a taxpayer, I feel I pay a lot of money to TransLink, and I don't use the service. At least I don't use the bus service simply because it would kill me to get to the bus. And I mean, my grandson yesterday came from Port Moody, at the top of the Port Moody Hill going into Coquitlam, to my house. It took him an hour and 3/4. That's just ridiculous. It's just stupid, even though it was a Sunday, but that's just stupid. So I think there's more work to do. I'd sooner be putting money, frankly, towards getting another bus than doing education, because you can educate people when you have something to offer them that can replace what you're trying to get them to give up. And I don't think we have enough to offer them. And my last question, your measurements that you showed, and Councillor Robinson loves measurables, but it looked like your measurements you were taking from your members, right? The people who have already joined. The thing I'd be more interested in knowing is a measurement to me of the program would be how many people are chomping at the bit to join. Not measuring how much the people like the service. I'd like to know, have you got a whole bunch of people that are just dying to join the program?
Are you referring to other communities or individuals?
Or wherever else you're trying to go with it?
We've actually have a lot of demand for all of our programs, for schools, for seniors, for new immigrants.
That's the measurement I want to hear about, yeah.
I don't have the exact measurement, but we do have oversubscribed capacity for our programs. I'd just like to clarify one point. I thank you so much for your comments, and I understand about transit service, that we would all like to have more service. I live on the North Shore, so I have a similar situation. TravelSmart program is really about all of our transportation options. So it's not only about transit service, it's also about walking, cycling, carpooling, more efficient use of our vehicles. So really, we've been working with Langley and Port Coquitlam, and we have these exact same concerns. And this is not really about just moving everybody on to transit. It's about how do we get people to think differently about the way that they travel, and to make a conscious decision before they just get into their car and drive on their own. Could they share a ride with a colleague? Could they walk with their child to school instead of driving them? So it is about understanding all of these options.
And I think we all understand these options around the table, but it's the makeup of our cities. Ours is very hilly. You can't go anywhere. We're like an egg carton. And so I think that's a difference. It's fine to come downhill, but you have to have a motor to go uphill. Yeah. So
I have one on my bike.
I know,
But it's only assist.
Listen, I'd have to have two motors. Thank you.
So you're hearing from us that in the suburbs, it isn't about promoting transit, it's more about providing transit options. And then, of course, there's a range of other options there. Councillor O'Neill.
Yes, those are some exact same points I was going to make. And I read this, lots of little yellow notes here, and that's essentially what I was going to say is if indeed this one of the primary goals of TravelSmart is to encourage more people to ride buses, and that's not the exclusive goal, as you've explained, then I think the number one way you could do that is to provide better service, and that's the message you've been hearing so far from us. Now, I do want to understand how TravelSmart, which is not just about getting people to ride buses more often, fits in with what TransLink is supposed to be doing. What my understanding, and actually I'll quote from TransLink's website here, right at the top under Mission, Vision, Mission, and Values. Since its founding, TransLink has evolved to become the South Coast BC Transportation Authority, but it still has the same goal, to expand and maintain the region's transportation network. Okay? So how does TransLink's effort in TransitSmart support that primary mission to expand and maintain the region's transportation network?
The transportation network does include roads and bridges as well as the transit service. So the goal of TravelSmart as a transportation demand management program is to make the reach of the transportation network more efficient. If people are utilizing, for example, bikes to access the transit network, or if you're utilizing car share so that you're taking transit part of the time and not buying that second vehicle for your family, it all equals a transportation network that is operating more efficiently, where we don't just have single occupant vehicles on the roads that are congesting it for goods movement and people need cars.
Okay, so then that would be like, and I think the parallel was made to PowerSmart, and BC Hydro's primary mission is to supply that power, but it also wants people to use that power more efficiently, so it's been attempting to persuade, cajole, incentivize, all sorts of things to get people to do that. So I can understand that then. Hang on a second, I've got another point here in all my little yellow stickers. About TravelSmart. Well, given... I don't want to imply that I don't want TravelSmart to end up sort of wagging a finger at people who, if it does get embraced by our city here. For a great many Coquitlam residents, traveling smart is driving their car. It's much more efficient. It's in many possible ways, it could be cheaper. It certainly would be faster. And with all the busy things that we have in our lives now, to think of taking a bus or riding a bicycle or walking to do something would be, it just doesn't add up. So traveling smart is driving the car, and we've seen with our annual Ipsos Reid polls that the public of Coquitlam places a high priority on improved networks of roads, improved conditions of the roads, and despite what our strategic transportation plan in the city says, they don't place nearly as high a priority on these other modes of transportation. The car is still king in Coquitlam, and there has to be a lot changed, a lot better options provided before that changes.
I was just going to respond to that. I actually live in Surrey, and I take transit every single day and have been for about 10 years. So you can imagine that's not an easy feat. So I think one of the main focuses to remember with TravelSmart is that it's not about getting out of a vehicle. I still have a vehicle. It's about maybe challenging your community to take one less trip. It's maybe, taking your children to a soccer game and then stopping to do your groceries on that same trip. It's about just thinking about smarter ways to travel. It's not necessarily getting out of a vehicle, and I don't think that's what this program is about. I think it's just getting people to think outside of the box. Yes, transit isn't at the place where we want to be at. We have 22 municipalities, and I know many of you around here, 22 mayors and 22 sets of council, and the common thing that I hear through every municipality is that we just don't have enough transit. And you're absolutely correct. I would have to agree. We're not there yet. But we're also facing some major funding challenges at TransLink, and we've been challenged to be able to take a look at our own books, and we've created programs like the service optimization. And yes, that has affected some people, and it has meant that we've cut down on routes to be able to expand on other routes that are needed. But it's where we are right now. It's TransLink's reality until we have new funding or new sources of funding for the organization. So I think this program is essentially about changing behavior. And many of you have probably heard about the UPass program. UPass program is one of our most successful programs. After our first set of university students came out with that pass, that's a pass that comes with their tuition, 4 years later, there was a group of students who actually knew how to use our system. That group are now working people in the society, and they actually have decided to go down to one vehicle. Maybe not two vehicles, right? Because they now know how to use the system. It's about making conscious choices. It's not necessarily giving up your vehicle. And I mean, I wouldn't be able to give up my vehicle. I still have my vehicle. But I still try to take SkyTrain where I can take SkyTrain, or use a bus when I can use a bus. So it's about trying to challenge our community to use and think about different ways of traveling while we are in a time where we can't expand. TransLink is not expanding right now, and probably won't be until our funding problems are sorted out in the next couple of years.
Right, and in that sense, then, service optimization actually was service reallocation. I think is a more honest way of describing it. Take from here and put there, take from there and put there. No expansion, as you said. So optimization, that's a nice way of spinning it. It was reallocation when it came to Coquitlam. Thank you very much.
Level 1, Councillor Robinson speaks after Councillor O'Neill. Councillor Robinson.
Well, I actually love the program. So I thank you for... I think changing attitudes and behaviors is really hard, and I think back to when the seatbelt laws came in and how challenging that was, because you wanted to use the carrot and not so much the stick, but you needed a carrot and you needed a stick. And now it's automatic, right? We have very high compliance with that sort of behavior and attitudinal change. And I think, we need to encourage people to, what I hear you saying is to think differently about how they use their vehicles and when they use their vehicles, so that when I think about, gee, I need milk and bread, but I also want to get a walk-in today, I could walk to the store, get my milk and bread, instead of walking Mundy Park, coming home, getting into the car, and then going out to get milk and bread. So that's how I understand this program. So I do think it's a good plan. A couple of things, though, that stand out for me. The community maps, in terms of sort of walkability, shortest routes to get groceries, shortest routes to the library, shortest routes, I do think it's people don't know how to get there, because we have been car-centric. since forever, but people don't know the routes. And I'm embarrassed to say that even in my community, which is on a hill in Ranch Park, I know that there's cut-throughs, there's stairs that would help me cut through to other places. I have no idea where they are. And I could spend a long time going through these little crescents and these dead ends trying to find them, but there's no easy map, there's no signage on our streets that says, cut through to here this way. So having some sort of community map that is oriented to the walker would certainly be an asset. One of the things that's frustrating, I certainly echo my colleagues' concerns about lack of transit, but certainly because as Coquitlam, there's a part of Coquitlam that can readily access either Braid or Lougheed. But the bus service to those stations are a bit of a barrier because they only operate once an hour. And so you wind up taking your car because it's just easier. And if we could take bikes, certainly during rush hour on transit, that would be fabulous. Because right now, if I have to go to Metro Vancouver, I have to either bike there or I have to ride part way. Or if I could just take my bike with me and get to where I needed to go, that would be fabulous. I would love to see that. It would help. And the last thing I'm going to say is this idea of the mayor doing one fewer car trips. I would encourage you to change that all of council, not just the mayor. We're all leaders in our community, and I would encourage you to invite all of us, including our senior staff, because they're good role models for the rest of their staff. We have 1,000, 1,200, 1,500 employees. I suspect most take vehicles. We know that we have challenges with parking here on site, and leadership starts with the leaders. And so I think if we encourage everybody to just do what they can, I think it makes great sense. So I think this is a fabulous idea, and look forward to certainly supporting the next generation at a minimum in thinking differently about how they get around. For some older folks, I am the youngest on council, by the way, I think it's a bit of a challenge. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Asmundson, who's quite a bit older than me.
No. Well, thank you for your presentation, and I just want to clear up some things here, and I'm going to criticize and also compliment. So we're going to go down the middle on this one here. To staff, we're talking about $25,000, $60,000, about $85,000 we're spending on our own information for people in our city to travel and use other modes of transit. Is that what we're spending?
No, each year we have an allotment of $25,000 for cycling education outreach. That was approved by council in 2008 as part of a bike facilities package. So it's $25,000 per year, but we're underspent on that. We're currently spending funds on Bike to Work Week, Canada Day event, and some education in the elementary schools. But we are, the $60,000 is the total budget amount that includes the $25,000 for bicycle planning.
So my question is to you then, will we get a better bang for our dollar by partnering with TravelSmart and get more out of it than if we were to be by ourselves?
The answer to that is yes, in part for the following. They have programs that work with seniors. They also have programs that work with new immigrants, and they have a broader suite of initiatives with the schools. So right now, we would be able to tap into those programs by partnering with them and actually leverage our money in a much broader way.
Well, thank you. And I just want to clear up, I think my council colleagues, none of them take transit, so they don't have the understanding on a regular basis to understand the service. And there's been some comments made that aren't accurate, about once an hour. Well, we have varying ranges of service from 97, which is 7 to 10 minutes, 10 minutes day base, and the rush is around 7 minutes. You have 15-minute on 169. You have a 20-minute on a 1511, 52 during the rush hours and periods. So there's a range of service. There's areas in Coquitlam that aren't well serviced, and there's areas in Coquitlam that have good service that get people and they can use transit. I will say, though, that how transit plans routes within the communities doesn't always work for the movement of people within that community. And that's an issue because TransLink tends to feed to their SkyTrains at the expense of their internal needs of people trying to get from one area to if you live on Como Lake and you want to go down to Schoolhouse to go to the theaters or anything down there, well, you got to take at least 2 buses, and you're not even going to get, you're going to have to walk down Schoolhouse. There's a lot of difficulties. We don't, TransLink hasn't planned well in certain areas for communities. That's outside your area. The other issue, though, for people with TravelSmart, and I like this concept, because what transit needs people to understand is that to take transit and make it effective, you have to plan your trip. And that's where people that have cars just go and when they ever want to. When you take transit, you have to think about where you're going, how you're going to get there, and plan your day. That's, I think, one of the issues that you're trying to get through TravelSmart is to people to understand they need to plan, they need to understand what time they're leaving, the times the buses are, the SkyTrain, and to come back. There's a bit of coordination. If you do that, because there's thousands upon thousands of people in Coquitlam every day taking transit, working for them, and they understand the system, but they've learned to plan their system. They've also learned that you can't expect TransLink or transit to be the fastest mode, but if you're on a bus, you can use that time differently and more effectively in other areas because you're not driving your vehicle. So there are ways to use transit. But I will also echo about Councillor O'Neill's issues that we have with not optimization but relocation. And you're looking at a couple 153, 157 that are not going to help us keep people taking transit. We're going from Brunette from 15-minute service rush down to half hour. That's not going to help people. We're looking at a 177 where people won't be able to go from Coquitlam Centre to the Mayfair or Pacific Reach Industrial for work, for shopping, the casino. That's not helping Coquitlam. That's not TravelSmart. And that's not helping us move forward. But the program here is a good program because it's talking about planning different modes of transportation and how to get around. So from that aspect, I think this has a lot of good benefit. I think we're getting, as staff said, a better bang for our buck out of this. So I think anytime we can leverage and get better use of our resources, I'm for that. So I'll be supporting moving this forward. But I think there's TransLink. Also, surely I'll agree with you. The issue right now for TransLink is the funding. And I agree with you. That's not your fault. That's where the ball's lying, and you're trying to scramble because of funding shortages. And that's up to the Mayor's Council. We thought at one point that there was an agreement on a 2% property tax temporarily for 400,000 hours of increased bus service throughout the region, which would have helped this area. But that didn't happen. So we're sitting using, I think Mayor Stewart can correct me, I think $30 million a year right now of reserve funding, and that's going to run out. So the Mayor's Council and the province have to come up and fix this situation.
And I think from the TransLink perspective, I mean, us as staff, we've been challenged, and that is to be fiscally responsible. The commissioners challenged us with that. Mayor's Council has challenged with that, and, you know, our now executive has. And so, you know, you want to call it service reallocation, optimization, whatever you may want to call it. We can't justify having a 40-foot bus with 3 people on it. And so ultimately that means, yeah, you know, a bus that was coming along every 10 or 15 minutes now is running on a 30-minute schedule. It's not great. It's not ideal. And I agree with you. But when you're running out of your reserves and you've been challenged to make some of these adjustments so that you can provide service where there are parts of the region that you have, you know, you're leaving people behind on a bus stop, and then you're having other times of the day when the bus is running with 3 people on it. I mean, I don't need to tell you, you're very well familiar with the bus service and how operations work with it. These were some of the things that we can do. And internally, I mean, there's been everything from staff cuts to, I mean, you name it, I mean, TransLink has gone through it. So this is kind of our reality, and it's not ideal. I mean, I would love to be able to stand here and say that we're going to be expanding. But what I can tell you, and most of you should have received an email from me about 2 weeks ago regarding the area transit plan, which has kicked off for this area. So that's going to be a 2-year process, which will be actually taking a look at the needs of this region, what needs to be changed, and hopefully we'll have the funds soon enough that we can actually implement them, and that we won't be at the point where we get the funds and then we have to say, well, where do we put the service? So this will actually be taking a look at the Northeast sector, how we should be serving the region, what needs to change, For example, when we did the South of Fraser Area Transit Plan, we didn't actually have a connection from Langley to White Rock. We were sending people from Langley to Surrey Central and then putting them on another bus to go to White Rock, and it was ridiculous. But there was never ever a need for it. But through the area transit plan, we were able to identify that. We were able to talk to residents in malls. We were able to consult with our elected officials. We were able to talk to businesses. And we were able to create a plan for the needs of the region. And that's what we're going to be able to do with the Northeast sector. So you'll be hearing from me in the next next month and a half or so. You'll get an invitation to an elected officials meeting, and I encourage you to come out, because that's going to be the forum where we'll talk about the changes that need to happen. And unfortunately, they're not happening right now, but it's for planning. It's for planning for that time when we do get the resources available. We can go ahead and go, okay, great. We know that we need to get that service back to a 10-minute schedule because we had to cut back, and we do have the ridership and we can warrant it. So there are some things that are happening that are exciting, but I want you to remember that that's a little bit separate from what TravelSmart and what Patricia here is trying to accomplish with her program. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hodge.
Well, I'm going to echo some of the message you've already heard and sort of touch on some new points here. And partly because I'm going to echo the message you've heard is because I live on Burke Mountain. And when you mentioned earlier that you'd like to see better service where you live, I just like service. So, it is a challenge in areas. And I think that I think the program which you're laying out is great. I'm particularly interested in the education component of that because, as Councillor Robinson said, I think it starts with the next generation. It may be too late for some members of our generation, and it's probably too late for some of the generation that's moving into Burke Mountain because they are moving in, they are buying extra cars because that's their only option. And it is going to be difficult to get them onto buses, and maybe our best hope is to educate them in making fewer trips with their cars because it's going to be tough to educate. And I do worry about future generations. And just this morning, I was at the bank with my son who had earned some money, and he was putting it in the bank, and the teller said, "What are you going to do? You're putting money in the bank and you're saving up." He says, "I'm saving to buy a car." And this is from a 12-year-old who's saving to buy a car. And my son, and you mentioned the parallels with PowerSmart, and this is a kid who turns off the tap when he brushes his teeth, and he turns out the lights, and he understands about saving power, but he can't connect with the concept of transit because he's never taken transit. And as I was sitting here, and Councillor Aspenson mentioned that there probably aren't other councillors that take transit. I don't take transit. And then I got thinking, my sons, we travel. They've been on buses in Europe. They've been in buses all over, in cities in Canada. They've never taken a bus in Coquitlam. And yet their only concept of riding a bus is that's something you do in another city. And that's where it gets back to that, the education is great, but we've got to provide buses here and alternatives. And certainly things like riding their bike and things like that, they will do. But to them, if I have a discussion about transit and alternate forms of transit, to them, it's a hypothetical discussion because it's not an option. And I think that we have to provide the options, we have to make it convenient, and we have to educate people. And I think that educating the young and what you're doing in the schools, I think is great. But as I said, my kids have never seen a bus in their neighborhood, so they wouldn't know how to put the money in the coin box. They wouldn't know how to ride a bus. And I think that's really a concern for me. And I'm hoping the day will come that they will have that opportunity. Certainly, I'll drive my car down to West Coast Express. So where it's convenient and it works for me, I will use transit. And I already try to make as few trips as I can, partly because my schedule's busy and I recognize the cost of fuel. And I think that with the cost of fuel going up, that is one of the things that will help people think about, cutting down on their trips. And that probably plays into the part on education. But I think you're really onto something on the education things, but it's going to be a tough sell, as you've heard here today. It's going to be a tough sell in some parts of the Lower Mainland, and particularly and certainly in Coquitlam, because we just don't have those options yet. But I hope someday that we will, and when those opportunities present themselves, that they will be embraced, because people will understand the concept and will be waiting for the opportunities to use some alternate forms of transportation. So thank you for your presentation, and I'll certainly be supporting the concept here. Thank you.
Okay, we'll go to Councillor Nicholson.
Thank you, Your Worship.
Your second, please. There we go. Nope, not quite. Don't. Don't push the button.
Finally. So I support the concept. I like the idea of education. I hope that our transit system can get to be so transparent that it doesn't take 4 years of post-secondary education with the U-Pass to become familiar with it and accustomed to using it. But ease of use is one of the critical factors. So I'm going to tell you my story. That back, I used to be on the board of the Evergreen Cultural Center across the street. One of the other board members was Bob Padden. This was before 2007. And whenever we met, I would come in and tell Bob my latest transit story, and Bob would say, "We're working on that." So when you were going through your slides, one of them showed us a trip planner, and I thought, well, that looks neat. That looks better than the one I used to use. So I switched my computer over and went to your website, but I couldn't find the trip planner. And then you finished talking, and then Councillor Sikora started talking, and then Councillor Reid started talking. And about the time Councillor Reid finished was when I found the trip planner button at the bottom of one of your pages that took me to the good old TransLink page with a trip planner. And I can't remember who was talking at that point. I was listening to them, though, while I was doing all this. And so I put in a notional trip that would take me from here to Lougheed and Burnett. And it said, what time do you want to go? And it defaulted to the current time, which was 2:25, 26 minutes ago. And so I hit the return key and ran very nice and quick, and it came up and offered me 5 choices of how to get there. And the trip time's not bad, but 3 of the 5 choices were leaving before 2:25. And that just defies all logic. And that's the story I told Bob Padden all those years ago. And maybe the guy's still working on it, or maybe he's no longer at TransLink. But I think if you looked at that, maybe 2 or 3 more people would start to ride the buses a little more frequently because they'd be able to get to it before it left. And I hope that you'll take a look at that. Councillor Asmundson suggested that most of us don't ride transit. And that's right, because it doesn't work to get from Ranch Park to City Hall and back again. But I moved here in 1976, and in 2007 I moved my office home. The rest of that time my office was in downtown Vancouver. I rode transit a lot, and I tried to use the trip planner a lot. I'm looking forward to using it to get me from Ranch Park to City Hall one day in the future. Thank you.
Okay. I'll go to Councillor Reamer. Just a second, please. There you go.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your presentation. I think this is a wonderful opportunity for us. And with everything that we do here at City Council, our success stories are really based on those where we create partnerships. And so I think this will be a very successful partnership. I do agree that as leaders of our community, we do need to set the example for the rest of our citizens, etc. And driving smart is one thing that I began doing when I moved up to the Westwood Plateau and found myself going up and down the mountain. And so I plan my trip now. I plan my day so that I'm leaving in the morning and I'm going home at night, and everything else I do sometimes in my vehicle. And including, our city is very geographically diverse. So it takes a long time, a half an hour to 45 minutes, if you want to go from the north end of the city to the southwest of the city. It can sometimes take a long time, and so I plan my trips that way as well. So that if I'm going into South Coquitlam and I know I need to be back in South Coquitlam later on in the day, I may just park my van and do my work in my vehicle so that I'm not driving back and forth and wasting all that gas. So it's not only about using the alternative modes, but as you mentioned, it's also about driving smarter and thinking and planning ahead so that we're not duplicating and going back and forth from area to area. So I just want to thank you very much, and I will be fully supporting these recommendations moving ahead. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Sikora.
Yeah, thank you very much. You know, I think the best thing, you know, that we could do is, you know, TravelSmart should be getting me from point A to point B in a hurry or in a reasonable time. So you can get me out of the car for certain areas, you know, for certain times, but it's not happening. See, so it doesn't matter what we spend. And I mean, you're trying to somehow say, we're gonna spend so much dollars a year for bicycles. Well, tell me, how much is our bicycle riding going up on a yearly basis in here? 0.5%? Is there 5 more people riding bicycles because of we're spending $60,000 or whatever it is? Is it 20? Is it 30? I don't know. But I guarantee you that half of our population here in Coquitlam is seniors. They'll never ride a bicycle. They can't, for many, many reasons. Where I live, there's 190 units, all seniors. Ain't one of them would ride a bicycle because some of them are with walkers and other things, but do they drive a car? Yes, they do. And you know, yeah, I can walk to the store to get a loaf of bread and milk. All depends where you live. If you're northeast Coquitlam, it might take you 3 hours to get a loaf of bread if you walk. So, you know, you know, you can, you know, getting people out of cars. Well, salesmen, you can't get them out of cars. They have to have their cars, you know. There's also, you know, can we miss one trip a week last here in the city? Of course we can. Cut out the meetings every Monday. Just have 2 meetings a month. We cut it out in a hell of a hurry. And can we get by? Of course we can get by. So, you know, and we're talking about that, you know, there's not enough money in transit. There never will be. They never will be. Not ever, the way TransLink operates. In fact, as you know, the Council happens to mention 2% on property taxes. I'd hope that that would come up at election time and campaign that I'm for property taxes to go up by 2%. See what happens to you at election time. I can guarantee you'd be out so fast make your head spin. You know, people are sick and tired of taxes. And I know that I shouldn't be telling you that because you're promoting bicycle riding and that type of deal. But, you know, it's one of those things that, you know, I don't know. I mean, we're taxing on everything, bicycle riding, everything else. What's the improvement on it? Can you tell me how many more riders do we see on bicycles on a daily basis as a result of us spending that money, educating? And how many people is there like you at TransLink?
Actually, let's put that question, because I know that in the last decade there's been significant mode shift away from the car. It's not enormous, but it is significant. Do we have
Finish, Mayor?
Sorry, you asked the question, and I'm posing the question to them.
I'd hope that they would answer it.
Okay, okay, so let's ask the question. Great.
No, I don't have any. We haven't come today with.
I haven't got the stats, see. So that's exactly what I'm saying. So those are the things. But really, frankly, how many people is there in your department that are actually working on this TravelSmart? Is there just the 2 yous, or there's a dozen?
I'm not in TravelSmart. I'm in government relations. I'm in TransLink's government relations, and Patricia here is the program manager for TravelSmart, and you have a team of.
So you're 4 of us in total. Four. I'm not going to say anything more. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor O'Neill.
Hello. I've heard some of my colleagues on council saying they support the program. I just want to get a point of clarification. In the recommendation that we have in front of us, it's just simply receive a report. And the report itself, though, is very affirmative leaning towards this. The conclusion of the report says, partnering with TransLink under the TravelSmart banner will enable the city to leverage existing TravelSmart programs, everything like that. But we're not being asked to endorse that. We're just being asked to receive this. Is that correct? So when do we expect to see, when does the department want us to make a decision on whether we endorse or not?
Mr. Souza.
Yeah, thanks, Your Worship. Well, from my perspective, we could decide now or we could convert this report very simply into a report for decision by formal council. The way we were thinking this through when the report was written was that the monies are already available for the purpose intended. And our review of the budget indicated, well, we were underspent, and from a staff perspective, this made sense in terms of effectiveness for the purposes that the money was originally voted on. If committee feels this needs a formal vote of council, we're happy to convert that into a regular public report and have a formal recommendation.
Well, this is a public report, and you have, I'm just wondering why that wasn't the case to begin with. That, what's the subtlety I'm missing?
Sure. Generally speaking, committee sessions are for presentations, and we do have an extensive presentation and a lot of discussion. And committee sessions are usually for information purposes. So what we can do with this, like I say, is convert it into a council report with specific recs. It'd be a couple of weeks before that appeared on the agenda.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, I'm going to actually support the idea of moving forward with this. I still have some questions that I want answered, but I'll deal with them offline. I just wanted to comment quickly that I took Councillor Nicholson's Councillor Nicholson's lead and put my home address, and I wanted to go to a show at the Red Robinson Theatre, and it took me north and then over to Lougheed Mall, where I got on SkyTrain, down to the Braid station, where I had to get off SkyTrain and get on a bus. It was an hour-and-a-half trip. If I left after midnight on the way home, it got me back the day after, I think, or something like that. So, I mean, there are some challenges, and Councillor Asmundson points out that the trip planner does seem to do that. Oh, by the way, the first three options were 10 minutes before the query was the press send. So, trip planner, we pose this again and again and again, and I recognize that someone isn't fixing it, and I don't know why they're not fixing it, because it's embarrassing when it's 3:30 and or it's 3 o'clock and you ask a question of trip planner. It says, well, if you left 15 minutes ago, you could do the following.
I think that's a really good point, and I'll be happy to take that. Here we are. We don't get TransLink in front of us very often, so we're going to bash you. I do want to thank you very much, because I want you to go away saying Coquitlam is such fun to speak to, that you want to come back and come back often. I think this is has a lot of exciting potential. I want us to, as a community, to continue to embrace alternatives to the car. I ride my, today I was so angry at myself for having had an active weekend such that my back was too sore to ride my bike today. But there's some great opportunities to encourage our community, but it is going to require us to invest in providing transit before we invest in promoting transit. Because right now, there are some areas of our city that won't have transit for 4 years. And or certainly not for the 2-year program that we're embarking on now. Oops, Councillor Reid.
Thank you. In view of all that's taken place around here, and we really are fun. I know you don't believe us, but we really are. I would like to know if you can modify the program. So here's where I see a wrinkle. In a situation like ours, which is different, we're not flat like some cities you go to, like Langley, you could walk 6 miles, but it's not, up to 15% grade, so it makes a little bit of difference for folks walking around. I would hate to take a full program like this out and then have people sitting and doing to you exactly what we're doing. Well, sure, it's fine to say that, but we don't have a choice. So what I would suggest to our staff is that we sort of modify the education part of it. I think that's great. I mean, I think that part of it is good, and there's probably lots of pieces that are good. But let's not put this in a position to fail. If we ask someone to stop doing this to do this, and then they say, well, the second option isn't available, then, that's my problem with it right now.
So, Your Worship, if I interpret that correctly, you're looking for a made in Coquitlam piece, if you will,
Work with them,
surrounding
but
this.
just
Sure.
change the wrinkles so that the program itself isn't going to become a failure because of something that's totally out of their control and ours. Thank you.
Okay. Staff are nodding. Thank you so much for coming. It's always a pleasure to have TransLink here.
We're going to have to start giving out chocolates or something.
We're not on the item. We don't receive the delegations. We're not on the item yet. We're still at the delegation. We're an enthusiastic group, aren't we?
You are enthusiastic.
Madam Deputy City Clerk.
The next item is receipt of the report from the General Manager, Engineering and Public Works regarding the TravelSmart program.
Moved by Councillor Asselson, second by Councillor Reamer, to receive the staff report. Councillor Robinson.
Thank you. I just want to be clear make sure I understood correctly. This isn't going to come back to us to have a vote on to do it. I'm assuming, based on what I understood Mr. Suzak to say, that we already have funding to do this kind of education. Council's already said, yes, go ahead and do this. This is just about describing a partnership that we're going to be working with in order to achieve the outcomes that we already said we would do. So there is nothing that's going to come back. It's just informing us that, by the way, this is who we're going to do that work with. This is in terms of the deliverables.
Thanks, Your Worship. That is the interpretation we had as staff when we wrote the report. We felt that what this program with TransLink represented was, for all intents and purposes, exactly what was in mind when outreach and whatnot was funded years ago.
Fabulous. Bigger bang for a buck.
Now, however, we're certainly friendly to coming back with specific recs if that is in fact the preference of committee.
I didn't hear that, but I think.
Okay, thank you.
I think it's a go.
Okay. Or now, Councillor Sikora.
Yeah, thank you very much. You know, we seem to use a lot of heavy things in this council chambers that we have the funding. Yeah, we have the funding for anything. If you want to tax the people out of their homes, I mean, the fact that just because there's something in a budget that we must spend it. Whether it's good, bad, or indifferent, we must spend it because it's in the budget. I mean, how silly is that? I wouldn't say anything more. Thank you.
Well, I will add that I actually didn't read it that way at all. I took it that if Council wanted to do this, the funding is already in place to do it. It's obviously entirely up to Council as to whether this is a priority for Council.
Correct, Your Worship. This activity is in effect already funded.
Okay, Councillor. No question that when we fund something, it comes out of the taxes. Okay. Anybody else? No. Motion is to receive. All in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. All in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. Thank you. We take 10 minutes, please.